In order for events to be later reconstructed accurately for any use at all, it has to first be accurately recorded. The security officer has therefore the obligation to do his best to record essential pieces of information for later use, whether that use is to be made by the property management company for investigative purposes for law enforcement or for eventual presentation in a court of law. Security officers' reports sometimes are thought to be the most visible part of his work. Today we're going to talk about what we actually record, how we record it, and some of the techniques that we can use to make our information more accurate.
I just got finished doing a merchant login. I'm just going to sit here and write down my activities for the day.
So is everything going
Let's consider what is actually reported. There are several categories which automatically fall into reporting categories. Some are not. In order to separate one from the other, we have to establish some rules about what needs to be reported, how it should be organized, and what other information may be required in connection with reporting. Usually, any request for security service will be worthy of the generation of a security report. These can be categorized as any notable event. Notable event is a somewhat ambiguous term, but a notable event is like pornography. You know it when you see it. Usually, request for security service is recorded onto a log. A log is kept by whomever is available. If dispatchers are available, then the call log will probably be maintained by the dispatcher. If dispatchers are not available, then probably a call log would be maintained by a supervisor or other person designated to do so. The call log, in order to be the most useful, usually contains several pieces of information. Usually, the date the information is received is either recorded on a portion of the sheet that serves as a call log, or it may very well be that the date is built into a sequential number which ascends with the number of calls. Let me describe what I'm talking about. For example, the first call on January the 1st, 1995 might very well be 01/01/95001. That would be the date, the month, the year, and the first call received in the new year. The 3 digits on the end would ascend sequentially, so call number 2 would be 002 and then repeat at the end. That's just a suggestion. Any mechanism that is useful can be used to determine when the call was received and to differentiate it, very importantly, from all other calls. Ordinarily, when a request for security service is received, a security officer would be dispatched. The call for assistance might come into a central location such as a security dispatcher. It might come to a management office or other facility provided for security use to receive incoming security calls, or it might even be received by a mobile member of the security staff who has some portable telephone or other communications device that would allow him to catch incoming telephone calls. When those calls come in, a radio dispatch of the officer to the event is usually what happens. When the officer responds, he might observe an event that has been reported, or he might not. If he observes an event and it is of a notable character, then certainly a written report should be made. We're going to discuss some of the elements of that report and some of the things that are required in order to prepare the type of report that would allow for future reference. In the scene you're about to see, someone needs help. A process occurs that, if it works well, provides excellent security coverage for a retail property. Let's take a look at how this security organization handles this incident.
Hello, security and maintenance. This is Wayne Livingston speaking. Yes. Cannyboro? You say a purse snatching? Snatching? Okay. Okay. What time? Okay. All right. All right. I send a security right down right now. Okay. Bye bye. 2125. 2025. We have a possible purse snatcher. Could you go check it out at Cannyboro?
In the event you have just seen, someone needed assistance. They called to a central location. The telephone call was answered promptly. The person who took the call requested all information that the security officer would need in responding to the call to handle it successfully. And now the security officer must prepare a report to indicate the event, what his actions were, and how it was handled. Let's take a look at some of the elements of a successful report. Ordinarily, there are 5 elements that are said to comprise a successful and complete security report. The first element is who. We need to know who is involved, who witnessed the event, who was the officer who responded. The who's are very important. The who's allow for future identification of witnesses because they as well would be identified. The who allows us to know precisely who witnessed the event and what was their connection to the event. We need next to know what was involved. The what is equally important. What happened? What was the event? What action was taken? What other steps might be needed to follow up? The what is a general description and with great specificity of what happened to cause this event to be reported. We need to know when. Frequently, in cases where reports are made, the precise time of the event is not known. For example, if a burglary reported in a store between the time the store closed last night until it opened tomorrow, when would not be known precisely, but a range of times could be provided to aid further and future investigation. For example, you could say that the store burglary occurred between the hours of 6:30 p.m. on one day and 8 o'clock a.m. the following day. That is an elimination of all times except during that period. And in further investigation by police, that could be a very significant piece of information. It could also be significant if you were looking at liability issues like what was the lighting or what security staff was available. Finally, there is where. Where did the event occur? Where did the action take place? Where did the officer encounter the suspect? All of the wheres need to be known. Again, instances where there is not enough information can lead to liability claims that are absolutely ruinous. How? The how needs to be described, free from opinion. How? Was the building entered by use of tools? Was the car stolen with the person inside? How? Describes what method was used to commit the act, or how the event occurred, or how it relates to other similar events. How is a very essential ingredient. So we have who, what, where, how, and when. These elements are absolutely essential. A good rule of thumb for a security officer is to ask himself these questions in planning how his report is to be made out and how it actually comes out. Once a report is written, it should be approved by someone else.
Brought you in here today to discuss one of your reports that you turned in. It's got really a lot of detail, a lot of facts in it, but the problem is some of the things that I just don't understand in here. You got also a couple of opinions in here. I'm going to have to ask you to rewrite it. There you go.
Has this happened to you? No one likes to have their work returned, but it is absolutely essential that reports be reviewed for completeness and accuracy and legibility. Security officers, like everyone else, have difficulty having their own work read by themselves and to be absolutely accurate. Another consideration is that a report written by a security officer may make perfect sense to the officer, but not be intelligible to anyone else. For that reason, supervisory review is absolutely necessary. Please keep in mind that it is very possible that every written report will be seen by a variety of people outside the organization and should be reflective of a professional organization. Even if there is no report written, it is absolutely essential that a record be made of the fact that security services were requested. That allows for a number of administrative considerations. For example, how many security hours are necessary? How much money should we spend on the security budget? How many hours should we schedule? When should we schedule those hours? Unless there is a record of when security services are requested and the type of security services that are requested, that information is simply unavailable. Since some actions by security officers do not require the preparation of written reports, this information represents a large chunk of missing information if it's not kept and kept accurately. When security officers handle events, in order to determine what action is appropriate for the event, it is absolutely necessary that there be predetermined event classifications. For example, a robbery in the state of Michigan may have a different definition from a robbery in the state of Illinois. Notwithstanding these differences in definitions, for purposes of defining every event, there should be a list of events, a list of definitions, so that everyone within the same security organization and within the same corporate structure is talking about the same determination of events. Events sometimes have various elements. Let me explain that. For example, if there is the taking of property, it can be a larceny or it cannot be a larceny. So the taking of property needs to be defined with specificity. The taking by a wife of her husband's car keys is not a larceny. So a larceny has to be the taking of the property of another with the intent to permanently deprive that person of the property. So great care should be taken in categorizing events. Not only is it necessary from the point of view of preparing an accurate report and to have it fit into a larger structure of report summaries, it is also necessary in order that the officer can determine what appropriate action should be taken based on this categorization of events. A cardinal rule of report writing is that it should be free from opinion. It is not wrong to say information that is contrary to what you were told, for example, but it is wrong to say that it is my opinion that someone is not telling the truth. Now let's take a look at this officer who's trying to decide what should go into his report.
I think Brenda hit Pam, but I'm really not sure. I think I'll just stick to the facts.
Security officers are human. Humans like to express their opinions. It's very difficult to have communications without having one of your own opinions involved. However, in the case of report writing, the security officer must take the objective position. He must decide what he is told. He doesn't need to be told to decide whether that's fact or not, simply what was communicated to him, and also how or what information he may know that is contrary to what he was told. His opinion about whether the statement made to him was truthful or not is not the issue. The issue is what facts are in his possession that would lead him to believe that the opinion given is not true. If he has that belief, he may express it by stating facts only, not by saying, "I believe." It's a very important distinction because in evidentiary processes, the opinion of the reporter is usually not an admissible fact. In courts of law related to litigation, which might arise from the incident being reported by the security officer, what the opinion of the officer indicates is not an issue. Also, the fact that he expressed an opinion might be taken to show that the report is not factual, but is simply the opinion of the officer. The individual security officer is ordinarily not in a position to say how records are stored, or where they're stored, or who has access to them. But all of those are very important issues that the security officer should be familiar with. First of all, please understand that as an employee of a company, documents prepared pursuant to official duties are considered to be proprietary. That simply means that they belong to the company that they were written for. They were not written for people who are outside the company. Proprietary means that care should be taken that records are safeguarded from unreasonable reading. A record system should be designed so that information goes into it and records are made available only as authorized by the procedure of the company or as may be subpoenaed by some authority, such as a court, with subpoena power. Security officers should be very careful that reports are not provided to people outside the company. Also, it is quite possible that frequently security officers are duped into revealing information that should not be revealed. For example, an attorney may call and say, "I represent your client." You should always, before discussing any event that came to your knowledge as part of your official duties with someone who can verify that the person who requests the information actually has authorization for it.
This Director of Security, can I help you?
Mr. Pope?
Yeah.
This is A.J. Whitestone, attorney.
Yes, sir.
I represent your mall, and I need a copy of an accident report reference a person who fell last month. Her name is Campbell. You may remember it. Hurt her leg pretty bad.
Your name is Mr. Whitestone?
Yeah, and let me give you my fax number. Fax it over here. I'll need it by 2 o'clock. The number is 734-2167.
2167.
Yes, okay. Can you have it over here by 2 o'clock, Mr. Pope?
Well, sir, as you know, our corporate attorney is Mr. Green. You'll have to call him, and he'll have to give his approval on this.
Listen, I get those things all the time.
Okay. As soon as Mr. Green gives me a call, you got it.
Who's Mr. Green?
Mr. Green's our corporate attorney.
So you can't let me have a copy of the report?
You can have it as soon as Mr. Green calls over and tells me it's okay. I'd be glad to help you out, but...
Even though I get them all the time?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
All righty.
It is not unusual at all for security officers to be asked to reveal information that should not be revealed. Copies of reports are ordinarily not provided to persons outside the organization. Those issues are determined by each individual company's own procedural requirements. However, as a general rule of thumb, such information is absolutely not provided to anyone outside the company except for a reason that is clearly specified in procedure. Also, any and all individuals who might have reasonable or authorized access to that information are usually defined. If there's any question at all whatsoever, then the information should not be released. Which brings us to another point. Security officers quite frequently come into the possession of confidential type information. Perhaps it involves a shoplifter, the identity of the shoplifter, what was taken, and so forth. It is a tempting thing to gossip about what you find out while you're working. But let me say that that information is, in fact, confidential. It is a tenet of the ethics of security that information in possession stays in possession. It is not discussed as a matter of gossip with persons who are not authorized to know it. Since we're human beings, just like with opinions and reports, it is sometimes very difficult to accomplish. But information that is in the possession of the security officer must remain there.
Hey, Roger, wait a minute. Your the report that you turned in last night?
Yes, sir.
It, I know you think I'm gonna yell at you or anything, but actually they really complimented you. Said all the facts were in there, all the opinions were out, and that's what we wanted before. So I just want to compliment you. It was a really, really good report.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank
No
you.
problem. There you go. You can turn that in. You go back on patrol.
In this scene, the security officer has clearly done his homework. He clearly understands the elements of a good report. He understands what is required. Let's take a brief review of what we've said about report writing. First of all, reports must contain factual information. They should be clearly written. You should include who, what, when, where, and how. Reports need to be reviewed by a supervising authority. Usually information that comes to the attention of security, whether or not a report is subsequently written, should be recorded for administrative purposes. You should be aware as a security officer of predetermined event classifications. That not only allows you to respond appropriately to the event, but it also allows you to make a report about it that is accurate and clearly reflects the type of event involved. We also talked about the need to have absolute confidentiality in reporting, the need for reports not to be released to unauthorized persons. We talked about, and we've even seen how that can occur inadvertently without an officer being awfully careful about who he releases information to. We talked about the need for reports to be confidential in character, that confidentiality is an ethical standard that should be adhered to by every security officer. Legibility, factual recording of information, and clear reporting of all the elements of a crime, of a well-defined event, are the essential ingredients for report writing. That's our program on report writing. I hope the information will be helpful to you in your career as a security officer. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.